In exactly 47 seconds, Seren Thorne, a 23-year-old human woman with no claws, no fangs, and no werewolf blood coursing through her veins, would make a choice that defied every survival instinct hardwired into her fragile body. She would position her 5'4", 118-pound frame between a corrupted beast and a 6-year-old boy whose silver eyes were wide with the kind of terror that rewrites a soul. And she would take 5 silver-tipped arrows, each one laced with wolf's bane and iron dust. Poisons designed specifically to kill a werewolf in under 3 minutes. Medical records would later show 2 punctured lungs, 4 shattered ribs, severed nerves in her lumbar spine and blood loss that should have killed a human being in 90 seconds flat. But for 4 minutes and 17 seconds, while those arrows tore through muscle and bone and organ, Seren Thorne didn't let go. This is the true account of how one human woman broke a 200-year-old law, changed the werewolf world forever, and forced an alpha king who hadn't felt anything in 5 years to remember what it meant to be alive. Rain hammered the forest canopy of the Cascade Mountains like 1,000 angry fists against stone. Every drop found its way through the Douglas fir and western hemlock, turning the earth into rivers of mud that sucked at boots and pulled at ankles with hungry desperation. Seren's boots were already ruined. The cheap leather stitched by her own hands 3 months ago because no one in the pack thought to provide proper gear, for the human was soaked through. Her socks squelched with every step. Cold water had worked its way up her calves, making her jeans heavy and her legs ache with the kind of deep chill that settles into bone. The thin jacket she wore did nothing. She'd patched it twice this winter. The right sleeve had a burn mark from when she'd gotten too close to the medical base furnace. The left pocket was torn from catching on a fence post during her first patrol 6 months ago. No one had offered her a replacement. Ahead of her, shadows moved with the kind of grace that reminded Seren every single day that she didn't belong here. Theron Corvus leapt over a fallen log without breaking stride. His boots barely touched the bark before he was airborne again, landing 20 feet away in a crouch that would have shattered human ankles. Rowena Kane shifted her weight mid-step, navigating roots and rocks with the casual precision of someone who could see in the dark and whose bones healed in hours instead of weeks. Kane Frost, no relation to the enemy pack, just an unfortunate surname, barely seemed to touch the ground at all. He moved like smoke, like shadow, like something that existed between one breath and the next. Seren stumbled. Again, her boot caught on an exposed root and she went down hard on one knee, palms sinking into mud that was freezing and sharp with pine needles. No one turned around. She was the only human in this patrol. The only one whose bones didn't knit themselves back together overnight. The only one who bled red and stayed down when she fell. The daughter of a dead healer. Kept around like an old shovel someone might need someday. Useful, never precious. Seren pushed herself up, wiping mud on her already filthy jeans, and kept moving. 3 years ago, her mother had died in this territory. Dr. Sarah Thorne had been the kind of healer who didn't ask questions, who stitched up werewolf warriors in the dead of night without demanding explanations for the claw marks or the bullet wounds or the burns that came from fighting enemies the human world didn't believe existed. Sarah had saved the previous alpha's life. That debt had bought Seren a place on the edge of Shadowmere territory when her mother's illness finally took her. A cabin with a leaking roof, work that no wolf wanted to do. Copying medical records in spidery handwriting because the pack didn't trust digital systems. Fetching herbs from the high meadows where wolf's bane grew alongside yarrow and St. John's wort. Carrying bandages and suture kits that warriors with accelerated healing rarely needed. She was tolerated. She was permitted to exist. But she was not pack. Someone called back without looking. Keep up, human. The words stung less than they used to. Seren had learned years ago, long before she ever set foot in Shadowmere, that wolves didn't waste breath on things that didn't matter. If they were calling to her at all, it meant they hadn't completely forgotten she existed. Small mercies. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, fevered and fading in those final days before the sickness took her. The cancer had been aggressive, stage 4, by the time they caught it. Sarah had refused treatment, said she'd rather die in the forest than in a sterile hospital surrounded by machines. Compassion is the bravest rebellion, Seren. Her mother had gripped her hand with fingers that were nothing but bone and papery skin. When fear tells you to turn away, you turn toward. Always toward. That's how you stay human in a world full of monsters. Back then, Seren had been just a girl of 20, holding her mother's hand, not understanding what those words would cost. Now she was 23, surrounded by creatures who could kill her with one careless swipe, and she understood perfectly. Every day she stayed in this territory was a rebellion. Every time she followed warriors into the dark was a choice. The kind of choice her mother would have been proud of, even if it terrified her. A howl cut through the rain. It was wrong. Not the coordinated calls of a hunt or the playful yips of young wolves testing their voices under the full moon. This sound scraped against every instinct Seren possessed, raising the hair on the back of her neck and sending ice water through her veins. A warning, a cry for help, or something darker. The warriors froze mid-stride. Their casual arrogance, the easy confidence of apex predators who feared nothing in these woods, was replaced in an instant by something sharp and alert. Lightning flickered between the trees, turning everything into a horror show of light and shadow. Thunder followed half a heartbeat later, close enough that Seren felt it in her chest. That came from the Alpha's private grounds, Rowena said. Her voice was tight, controlled, but Seren heard the edge of fear underneath. The Alpha's private grounds were off limits to everyone except immediate family and the Alpha himself. 20 acres of old-growth forest surrounding the main house, where Lucian Ashford lived with his son, where 6-year-old Caden played in the afternoons with carved wooden wolves and asked questions about his mother who'd been dead for 5 years. The second sound was worse, a child's scream, high and raw and absolutely terrified. The kind of scream that came from a throat that didn't know if it would ever make another sound. Seren's heart forgot how to beat properly. The warriors moved, bones cracked with sounds like breaking branches, muscles swelled and shifted under skin that rippled like water. Clothes shredded the pack provided tear-away garments for exactly this reason, pants with snaps and shirts designed to fall away during the shift. They became wolves mid-run, massive creatures, deadly. Their humanity stripped away in favor of fur and fang and the kind of speed that made Seren's bestest sprint look like standing still. They left her alone in her fragile human skin. She ran anyway. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. Every step was a prayer that she wouldn't trip over a root and break her neck before she got there. The forest blurred around her. She couldn't keep up, couldn't even see them anymore. But she didn't stop. Her mother's words were a drumbeat in her head, in her blood, in the frantic rhythm of her pulse. Turn toward, turn toward, turn toward. The clearing opened like a wound in the earth. Lightning struck close enough that Seren could taste metal on her tongue, smell ozone, sharp and burning in the air. The flash revealed everything in brutal, unforgiving detail. A creature that shouldn't exist. It had been a wolf once, maybe. The basic shape was there, 4 legs, a tail, a muzzle full of teeth. But everything else was wrong, twisted, corrupted by something that turned nature inside out and made it scream. Its fur was matted and falling out in patches, revealing skin that looked burned and weeping. Red eyes glowed like coals in the darkness. Foam hissed and popped at the corners of its mouth, thick and yellow and wrong. An infected wolf. Seren had heard stories, whispered warnings in the medical bay about what happened when a werewolf was bitten by something cursed. Something that carried a disease that turned their healing into a weapon against them, twisting muscle and bone until they became something else entirely. Something that had to be put down. 3 warriors in wolf form circled the creature. Theron Corvus, massive and grey, with a scar across his muzzle from a fight 10 years ago. Rowena Kane, smaller but quick as Mercury, her red-brown fur slicked dark with rain. Kane Frost, the tracker whose black coat made him almost invisible in the shadows. They were losing. The infected beast was too fast, too hungry, too far gone to feel pain or fear or anything except the burning need to spread its corruption. And near a fallen branch, pressed against the massive trunk of a Douglas fir, a small figure huddled in the dark. A boy, maybe 6 years old. His ankle was twisted at an angle that made Seren's stomach turn. Silver eyes, distinctive, unmistakable, were wide with the kind of terror that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Seren recognized him. She'd seen him from a distance at pack gatherings, always surrounded by guards, always precious, always protected. Caden Ashford, the Alpha King's son, the future of Shadowmere. Movement on the ridge above caught her eye. Archers, 5 of them lined up along the rocky outcrop that overlooked the clearing. Silver-tipped arrows already nocked, strings drawn back. The arrows glinted with something dark and oily in the lightning flashes. Wolf's bane, iron dust, the only things that could kill an infected werewolf fast enough to matter. The beast lunged toward Caden. Seren didn't think. Thinking was what stopped people from doing impossible things. Thinking was what kept you safe and small and alive. Thinking was the enemy of the kind of choice her mother had died trying to teach her. She sprinted across the mud. Her boots slid. Her arms windmilled for balance. She covered 40 feet in what felt like 5 seconds, and 5 years' time stretching and compressing until she couldn't tell if she was moving fast or if the world had simply slowed down to let her reach him. She threw her body over the boy, curled around him, making herself a shell, a shield. Her hands locked behind his head, cradling his skull, protecting the most vulnerable parts of him with the most vulnerable parts of herself. Her voice was barely a whisper against his rain-soaked hair. "I've got you, sweetheart. Don't move. I won't let go." Caden sobbed beneath her. His small hands clutched at her jacket with desperate strength. "I'm scared. I'm scared." "I know, baby. I know. But you're safe now. Just close your eyes. Don't look. I've got you." The archers loosed their arrows. In the darkness, in the rain. They didn't see her. How could they? She was just a human, small and forgettable. A shadow among shadows. Not pack, not precious, not worth accounting for. The first arrow punched into her shoulder and the world became pain. It drove through the meat of her right trapezius muscle, scraped along her scapula with a sound she felt more than heard, and buried its tip against bone. The silver burned. The wolf's bane sent fire racing through her bloodstream. The iron dust made her blood scream. Seren's vision went white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just a wheeze, airless and broken. The second arrow slammed into her ribs. She felt something crack, heard it. The fourth and fifth ribs on her right side gave way like dry kindling. The arrow punched through, collapsed her lung, sent blood flooding into her chest cavity where it didn't belong. Her lungs forgot how to work. She couldn't breathe, couldn't draw air. There was only pressure and pain, and the wet sound of blood in places blood should never be. The third arrow buried itself in her lower back. It severed the L3 nerve. Fire spread through her spine, shooting down her legs in waves that made everything below her waist go numb and cold and distant. She couldn't feel her feet anymore, couldn't feel the ground, couldn't feel anything except the terrible absence where sensation used to be. The fourth arrow raked across her thigh. It tore through cloth and skin and muscle, nicked her femoral artery, just enough to send blood hot and fast soaking through her jeans. She felt it pumping out with every heartbeat, felt her body trying to keep pressure on a wound it couldn't reach, felt herself getting colder. The fifth arrow shattered against her side. It didn't punch clean through. Instead, it lodged deep between her ribs, the jagged silver tip grinding against something inside her chest. That might have been her heart, or might have been the sack around her heart, or might have been nothing at all, because everything hurt so much, she couldn't tell anymore. Seren kept her hands locked behind Caden's head. She kept whispering, kept promising, kept lying with every breath that came harder than the last. I've got you. Don't move. Just listen to my voice. I won't let go. I won't let go. Not while you're breathing. I won't let go. Caden sobbed beneath her. His small body shook with the force of his terror. He was trying to curl into himself, trying to make himself smaller, but Seren held him tighter. Don't look, sweetheart. Don't look. Just listen. Can you hear the rain? Can you hear my voice? Focus on that. Just that. I'm not going anywhere. Blood filled her mouth, copper and salt. She swallowed it down because she couldn't let him hear her choking. Couldn't let him know. The infected beast charged. An explosion of shadow and fury hit the clearing like a bomb going off. A massive wolf, obsidian black, easily 400 pounds, collided with the corrupted creature mid-leap. The impact sent both of them tumbling, claws, raking teeth, flashing in the lightning. The fight was brutal and fast. The obsidian wolf moved with the kind of precision that came from decades of training. Every strike was calculated. Every bite was placed to kill. He tore into the infected beast with savage efficiency, ripping out its throat, crushing its spine, ending it in less than 30 seconds. When the corrupted wolf finally stopped twitching, the forest fell silent. Nothing moved except the rain. The obsidian wolf shifted, bones realigned, fur receded. A man stood in the clearing, naked and covered in gore, dark hair, plastered to his skull, and harsh lines carved into a face that looked like it had been made from stone and fury. Lucian Ashford, Alpha King of Shadowmere, Lord of this territory and everything in it. He was 35 years old, and he had not smiled in 5 years. Not since the night his mate Victoria was murdered by enemies who wanted to destabilize his pack. Not since he became a widower with a 5-year-old son who asked every night when Mama was coming home. He expected to find his son torn apart. Expected to find pieces of the boy he loved more than his own life scattered across the mud and pine needles. Expected to have to gather those pieces and carry them home and figure out how to keep breathing in a world where both his mate and his child were gone. Instead, he found a small human woman, crumpled over Caden like a broken bird, 5 arrows jutting from her body like cruel feathers, silver tips glinting in the rain, still whispering promises into his son's hair even though her voice was barely a rasp. I've got you. I've got you. You're safe. You're safe. Lucian dropped to his knees. His hands moved over Caden, first training and instinct taking over, checking for wounds, checking for blood, checking for anything broken or torn or missing. Nothing. Not a scratch. His son was whole. His son was alive. Because of her. Lucian's gaze locked on Seren. Her blood was everywhere. On his son. On the ground. On his hands, now warm and slick and wrong. Because human blood was supposed to stay inside human bodies. And there was so much of it. Too much. How was she still conscious? His face, always stone, always unreadable. The mask he'd worn for 5 years to keep from falling apart, cracked. Witnesses would whisper about this moment for years. How the Alpha King, who hadn't shed a tear since his mate died, pressed a shaking palm to the human girl's cheek. How his eyes glossed over with something that looked like grief and wonder and horror all tangled together. How his voice broke when he choked out her name. For the first time in 3 years. Seren. She tried to smile. It came out wrong, bloody. Her teeth were red, her lips were pale. But she smiled anyway because there was a child alive beneath her, and that was all that mattered. The pup. Her voice was barely a whisper. Is he safe? Lucian's hand trembled against her face. You saved him. Good. Her eyes started to flutter. That's good. Seren, look at me. Look at me. His other hand came up, cradling her face between his palms. Stay with me. Don't you dare close your eyes. But Seren's body had other plans. The edges of the world blurred. Sounds became distant. The rain didn't feel cold anymore. Nothing felt like anything anymore, except a strange floating sensation, like she was being lifted out of herself. Voices shouted orders. Strong hands lifted her so carefully, like she was made of glass, and pain exploded fresh with every movement. She tried to tell them to be careful with the arrows, tried to explain that pulling them out would make her bleed faster, tried to remember what her mother had taught her about field medicine and trauma care. But her mouth wouldn't work anymore. The last thing she heard was Caden crying for her, calling her the brave lady, begging his father not to let her die. Then darkness took her and Seren Thorn stopped fighting. The healer's wing of the Alpha house smelled like blood, an antiseptic and desperation. Dorian Vale, head healer, 53 years old, steady hands and steadier nerves, barked orders like a general in battle. His assistant Lyra moved with surgical precision, cutting away arrow shafts, extracting tips, pressing cloths against wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding. "She's human," someone said it, panicked, stating the obvious like it was a death sentence. "She can't survive this." 2 collapsed lungs, shattered ribs, spinal damage, the blood loss alone. "She will." Lucian's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Do whatever it takes." He stood in the corner, still covered in gore from the fight, still naked. Someone had thrown a sheet around his waist, but he hadn't bothered to secure it properly. He refused to leave, refused to look away. His son was safe with the caretaker and Naira, washed and checked and tucked into bed with a sedative to help him sleep through the nightmares that would come. But Lucian couldn't leave this room, couldn't leave her. Dorian looked at him, really looked. There was a question in his eyes that he didn't dare speak aloud. The law was clear. Giving werewolf blood to a human was forbidden. It created bonds that weren't supposed to exist, changed things on a fundamental level that couldn't be undone. But Dorian had been pack healer for 30 years. He'd seen the Alpha King's face when he carried his dying mate into this same room, had watched him shut down, go cold, become stone. He'd never seen Lucian look like this, desperate, terrified, human. "I don't care what the law says." Lucian's eyes met his. "Save her." Dorian nodded once. "Lyra, prep for transfusion. Direct artery to artery. We're using alpha blood." The room went silent. Even in a crisis, even with a dying woman on the table, that statement made everyone stop. "Sir," Lyra's voice was careful, "that's forbidden. The bond it creates." "I know what it creates," Lucian stepped forward, "and I'm ordering you to do it anyway. Now." They moved. The transfusion method was medieval but effective. A tube running from Lucian's wrist directly to Seren's arm, his blood flowing into her veins, thick with the properties that made werewolves nearly immortal. Pure alpha blood, the strongest healing factor in the pack, the kind of blood that could knit bones and seal wounds and bring someone back from the edge of death. If it didn't kill her first. Seren's body convulsed, her back arched off the table, her eyes rolled back. The heart monitor screamed a flatline tone that made everyone in the room freeze. "She's rejecting it." Lyra grabbed the paddles. "Human system can't process wolf properties. It's killing her faster. Keep going." Lucian's voice was steady. His wrist was still connected to her arm, still pumping his blood into her dying body. "She's stronger than you think." Alpha, her heart stopped, then restarted and keep going. Lyra placed the paddles. Clear. Seren's body jerked. The monitor stayed flat. Again. Clear. Another jerk. Another flat line. Lucian's free hand, the one not connected to her by a tube full of his own blood, reached out and pressed against her chest, right over her heart. His eyes closed. "Breathe, little rebel." His voice was so quiet only Dorian heard it. "Turn toward. Isn't that what your mother taught you? Turn toward life. Turn toward hope. Turn toward me. Don't you dare stop now." The third shock hit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the monitor beeped once, twice, a rhythm that was thready and weak but there. Seren's chest rose with a shallow breath. Dorian didn't let himself feel relief yet. We need to stabilize her before the internal bleeding. Then stabilize her. You have my blood. You have whatever else you need. Use it. For the next 4 hours, they worked, stitching, cleaning, draining fluid from her chest cavity, setting her ribs, repairing what could be repaired, and praying that the alpha blood flooding her system would take care of the rest. Lucian didn't leave the chair beside her bed, even after the transfusion was done. Even after Dorian wrapped his wrist and told him he'd given too much blood and needed to rest, he sat in that leather chair with his elbows on his knees and his eyes on her face, watching, waiting. 3 days passed. Seren hovered between life and death like a ghost that couldn't decide which side to haunt. Her fever spiked to 104. She hallucinated crying out for her mother, begging someone to stop. Please stop, it hurts, make it stop. Lucian bathed her forehead with cool cloths, changed them when they went warm, whispered things he'd never said to anyone. You don't get to die for my son and then leave me here. You don't get to be that brave and then just disappear. Stay, fight, turn toward. Warriors came and went, asking after the human, bringing reports of increased patrols and heightened security and whispers of something building at the borders. Lucian waved them away. His beta Callum Reed brought him food he didn't eat and clothes he didn't wear and updates he barely heard. The council wants to convene. They're calling what you did a violation of law. Let them call it whatever they want. Lucian, they're talking about stripping. I don't care, Callum. Lucian's eyes never left Seren's face. Schedule the meeting. I'll deal with it after she wakes up. And if she doesn't? The silence that followed that question was answer enough. On the third day, just before dawn, Seren's fever broke. Lucian had finally dozed off in the chair, his head resting on the edge of her bed, one hand still wrapped around hers. He woke to the feeling of her fingers twitching. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first pupils, contracting against the candlelight, trying to make sense of where she was. She saw him first. Lucian jolted fully awake, half rising from his chair. Seren. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer, like a miracle, like something he'd been afraid he'd never get to say again. Her voice was a rasp, barely there. The pup. Caden is fine, not a scratch because of you. She tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her ribs, even with accelerated healing from his blood-broken bones. Took time and she gasped, face going white. Lucian's hands were on her shoulders immediately, steadying her, easing her back down onto the pillows. Don't move, you're still healing. How long? 3 days. Her eyes went wide. 3 days. I've been unconscious for 3 days. You died twice on the table. We had to restart your heart. You lost enough blood that you should be dead right now. So yes, 3 days. Seren stared at him, really looked at him for the first time. He was a mess. His shirt was half unbuttoned and stained with what might have been blood or coffee or both. Stubble shadowed his jaw, dark and unkempt. His eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep. His hair stuck up at odd angles, like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. He looked nothing like the regal alpha king she'd glimpsed at ceremonies and pack gatherings. He looked human, exhausted, terrified. You stayed. It wasn't a question. I stayed. Why? Lucian's jaw tightened. His hands were still on her shoulders, warm and steady, and he seemed to realize it at the same time she did. He pulled back slowly, fingers trailing away like he didn't quite want to let go. Because you saved my son. Because you bled for a child that wasn't yours. Because you... His voice cracked. He looked away. Why? Why would you do that? Why would you throw yourself in front of 5 arrows for a pup that has no connection to you? Seren's throat closed. She could see it in his eyes. The genuine confusion. The inability to understand why anyone would make that choice. 5 years of grief had hollowed him out so completely that compassion looked like madness. Because he's 6 years old, she said quietly, And he was afraid, and no child should ever be afraid and alone. Lucian's breath caught. He stared at her like she'd just spoken in a language he'd forgotten he knew. Like she'd reached into his chest and grabbed his heart and reminded it how to beat. Then his head dropped. His shoulders shook, and Seren realized with quiet shock that the Alpha King was crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears falling onto their joined hands. When had he grabbed her hand again, his whole body trembling with the force of emotions he'd kept locked away for 5 years. "I'm sorry." His voice was broken. "I'm so sorry. We should have protected you better. Given you proper gear, proper training, treated you like pack instead of. It's okay. It's not. You almost died. You did die, twice. And He looked up at her finally and his eyes were devastated. "I've been watching you for 3 years. Did you know that? Since the day you arrived, I watched you reorganize the medical bay and teach the pups to read and sit alone in the meadow with wildflowers in your hair. I watched you cry on the anniversary of your mother's death. I watched you be kind to a pack that treated you like you didn't matter. And I did nothing." Seren's vision blurred. "You were grieving." "That's not an excuse. Victoria died and I shut down. Stopped feeling anything because feeling hurt too much. And then you walked into my territory and you were so..." He broke off, shook his head. "I was afraid. Afraid of caring about someone again. Afraid of losing someone again. Afraid of feeling anything at all. So I watched from a distance and told myself that was enough." And now, Lucian's thumb brushed across her knuckles. Gentle, reverent. "Now I realize I was already lost." The door opened. Theron Corvus stood in the doorway. The massive enforcer who'd once told Seren to stay out of combat zones. Who'd left her behind in the forest more times than she could count. He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to one knee beside her bed. His fist pressed to his heart in a formal salute that made Seren's breath stop. "Heart shield." His voice was rough. "You shamed us all. I didn't mean to. You showed us what courage looks like, what it means to stand in front of fear instead of behind it. You took 5 arrows without flinching. You held the line when warriors with claws and fangs fell back." His eyes, pale gold and fierce, met hers. "You are the shield. I'm just the sword." He stood, bowed his head, and left without another word. One by one they came. Kane Frost, who knelt and said, "I won't forget." Rowena Kane, who pressed a bundle of wildflowers into Seren's hand and whispered, "Thank you for showing us we can be better." Warriors she'd never spoken to. Guards she'd passed in hallways. Even young wolves, barely old enough to shift all of them, coming to pay respects to the human woman who'd done what they were trained to do. Stand between the pack and the darkness. Don't move. Don't let go. On the 4th day, the council convened. Elder Melis arrived with Alden and Sarin, their faces grave. They stood at the foot of Seren's bed. She'd been moved to a room in the Alpha House windows overlooking the forest, actual sunlight for the first time in days, and regarded her with expressions she couldn't read. "Seren Thorn," Melis's voice carried the weight of centuries. "The council has deliberated on your actions, on what you did, what it cost, what it means." Seren's heart hammered. This was it. They were going to banish her or arrest her or, "We cannot let your sacrifice go unnamed." She blinked. "I'm sorry." In the year 1847, Alden said, the title Heart Shield was created. Only 3 individuals have ever held it. All of them were werewolves. All of them were warriors who defended this pack for decades. You are none of those things. Seren's stomach twisted. Yet the council votes unanimously. Sarin continued. 9-0, you are Heart Shield of Shadowmere. The room spun. "I don't understand." Melis stepped forward. "It means you stand between the pack's heart and all who seek to break it. You are recognized, not as a guest, not as a tool to be used, as one of us." "But I'm human. I'm breakable." Melis smiled, sharp and knowing. "Then you understand the value of every breath. That makes you twice as dangerous to our enemies, and twice as precious to us." Lucian stood from where he'd been leaning against the wall. "Did you know they were going to do this? I suggested it." His eyes met Seren's, but they agreed without hesitation. You earned this. I don't know how to be a heart shield. You already are. He moved closer, sitting on the edge of her bed. His hand covered hers, warm, steady, real. You've been one since the moment you refused to let go. The ceremony happened 2 days later. Seren could barely walk without help, but she stood in the great hall surrounded by 340 werewolves who howled their approval when the elder Melis pinned a silver shield to her collar. The pin was small, delicate, etched with symbols she didn't recognize, but it was hers. And for the first time in 3 years, Seren Thorn felt like she belonged. The room they gave Seren took her breath away, not the medical bay with its smell of antiseptic and the constant beeping of monitors, not the leaking cabin on the edge of territory where she'd spent 3 years pretending the cold didn't seep into her bones. A real room, in the Alpha House. Large windows overlooked the Cascade Forest where morning light filtered through Douglas fir and turned everything gold. A reading nook sat beneath those windows, piled with cushions in deep blues and soft grays. Bookshelves lined one wall, already stocked, she noticed, with titles she recognized from the library. Wild flowers sat in a simple vase on the desk, fresh ones. Someone had picked them this morning. Lucien stood in the doorway watching her take it in. His shoulder pressed against the frame arms crossed something cautious in his expression, like he was afraid she might refuse. It's too much, Seren said quietly. It's not enough. Lucien, you died for my son. His voice was rough. Twice. On that table your heart stopped twice. And before that, you took 5 arrows that were meant to kill werewolves in under 3 minutes. You held on for 4 minutes and 17 seconds. He pushed off the doorframe, stepped into the room. This is the bare minimum of what you deserve. Seren turned to face him. Her ribs still ached with every breath, even with the accelerated healing his alpha blood had given her. The scars were there. She'd seen them in the mirror that morning. 5 silver lines across her body, like cruel constellation points. I should have done this years ago. Lucien moved closer. Too close. Not close enough. His hand lifted, resting on the doorframe above her shoulder, and suddenly the space between them felt charged. Should have told you that you mattered, that you were seen. Why didn't you? Because I was a coward. The admission came out raw. Because watching from a distance felt safer than admitting I cared what happened to you. And now, his voice dropped lower, intimate. Now I can't pretend anymore. Seren's pulse jumped in her throat. He was so close, she could see the gold flecks in his grey eyes, could count the days of stubble on his jaw, could smell pine and rain and something underneath that was just him. His hand lifted from the doorframe, moved toward her face. His fingers brushed a strand of dark hair, away from her temple, tucking it behind her ear. The touch lingered. His thumb traced the line of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. You change everything, Seren. She should step back, should put distance between them, should remember that he was the Alpha King, and she was what a human with a fancy title and scars that proved she didn't know when to run. Instead, she leaned into his touch, just slightly, just enough to watch his eyes darken. The moment stretched, fragile, charged. His gaze dropped to her mouth. She tilted up. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Lucien stepped back like he'd been burned. His hand fell away, leaving Seren cold and aching and confused. Caden appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas, dragging his stuffed wolf behind him. Daddy, can we show Heartshield the garden? I want to show her where the rabbits live. Lucien's expression softened immediately. After breakfast, pup, and after Heartshield has rested more. But I want to show her now. Caden, there was gentle authority in his voice. She's still healing. We need to be patient. The boy's face fell. Seren's heart twisted. How about this? She said, moving carefully to crouch down to his level. Her ribs screamed, but she ignored them. You go have breakfast with your dad. And this afternoon, if I'm feeling strong enough, you can show me everything. Deal. Caden's face lit up. Really? Really? I want to see where the rabbits live. He threw his arms around her neck too tight, too enthusiastic, and Seren bit back a gasp of pain. But she hugged him back anyway, this small boy who'd been so terrified in that clearing, who'd sobbed beneath her while arrows tore through her body. Worth it. Every arrow. Every scar. When Caden ran off to get dressed, chattering about all the things he'd show her, Lucian stayed behind. You don't have to do this. Do what? Pretend to be okay when you're hurting. I can see it. The way you move. How you hold your ribs when you think no one's looking. He stepped closer again. You're allowed to heal, Seren. You don't have to be strong every second. If I stop being strong, I'll fall apart. Then fall apart. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. I'll catch you. Life in the Alpha house was strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Seren woke each morning to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't have to cover with cardboard to keep out the cold. Ate breakfast at a long table where Caden chattered about his lessons and his friends and the new fighting moves Theron was teaching him. Lucian sat across from them drinking coffee that smelled like dark roast and watching his son with an expression that made Seren's chest tight. He smiled now, not often, not easily, but sometimes when Caden said something particularly earnest, or when Seren made a dry observation about pack politics that caught him off guard, his mouth would quirk, just at the corner, just enough to show he was still human underneath all that stone. The nightmares came at night. Seren would wake gasping, feeling phantom arrows punching through her body, tasting blood and rain and terror. The scars ached in the cold. Her spine remembered being severed. Her lungs remembered not working. She learned to muffle her cries in her pillow. But somehow, Lucian always knew. She'd wake from the nightmares to find him standing in her doorway, never entering without permission, just there, present. Can't sleep, he'd ask. Old habit. One night, 2 weeks after the ceremony, he found her on the balcony outside her room. 3 in the morning. She was tracing the scar on her ribs through her nightshirt, feeling the raised silver line where the second arrow had cracked bone. Want to talk about it? Seren didn't turn around. Which part? Any of it. Lucian leaned against the railing beside her close enough that their arms almost touched. All of it. So they talked. About Victoria. How loving her had felt like breathing. How losing her had turned him to stone because feeling anything, grief, anger, hope, hurt too much. How he'd spent 5 years going through motions, being the alpha his pack needed while dying slowly inside. About Sarah Thorne. How she taught Seren that compassion was the bravest rebellion. How she died in this territory because she'd refused to leave the pack she'd spent decades serving. How Seren had inherited her mother's stubbornness and her inability to walk away from people who needed help. About being tired, so tired of living half alive, of going through motions without feeling them, of pretending everything was fine when everything was broken. I forgot what it was like, Lucian admitted quietly, to want to wake up in the morning. What changed? He turned to face her fully. The moonlight caught the sharp planes of his face, made his eyes look silver instead of grey. I started watching you. His voice was barely above a whisper. The way you move through the world, like every moment matters. The way you care even when no one's looking. Even when no one deserves it, you reminded me that feeling something, anything, is better than feeling nothing at all. His hand slid around her waist, ostensibly to steady her when she winced from a sharp pain in her ribs, but his palm rested warm against her hip, thumb brushing the edge of scar tissue through her thin nightshirt. Does it still hurt? Sometimes. He stepped closer. His chest was nearly touching her back now. His other hand came up to rest on her shoulder, grounding her, warming her. Breathe with me. Seren followed the rhythm of his breaths, slow and steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. His breath was warm at her ear, sending shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with cold. Better, she nodded, didn't trust her voice. Every nerve was alive, singing. She forced herself to focus on breathing, on the scars that still ached, on anything but the heat radiating from his body. When she finally turned to face him, his hands remained on her waist, holding her like she was something precious, something that might break if he let go. Seren. Her name on his lips sounded like a question, like a prayer, like something he'd been afraid to say for too long. She didn't know who moved first, but suddenly, the space between them was gone. His forehead rested against hers. She could feel his heartbeat through his shirt, fast and hard and real. His hands tightened on her waist. Her fingers curled into the fabric at his chest. Then, Caden's voice cut through the night. "Daddy, I had a bad dream." The moment shattered. Lucien stepped back, jaw tight with frustration. His hands fell away slowly, reluctantly, like he didn't quite want to let go. Yeah. He left to comfort his son. Seren stayed on the balcony, shaking, wondering how much longer they could keep dancing around this. Training began on the 7th day after the ceremony. Dorian had cleared her for light activity, very light, stretches, breathing exercises, nothing that would stress the newly healed bones or tear the scar tissue that was still forming deep in her muscles. But Theron Corvus had other ideas. "Your heart shield now," he said, tossing her a practice knife. "Wooden weighted to feel like the real thing. That means you need to know how to actually defend yourself, not just throw your body in front of threats and hope for the best." Seren caught the knife, barely. "I know how to use a blade. You know how to stitch wounds. Different skill set." He pulled his own practice knife. Stance. She fell into position, feet shoulder width apart, knife held low and ready. Her mother had taught her basics enough to defend herself on supply runs, enough to handle aggressive drunks who stumbled too close to their clinic. Theron circled her like a predator. "Not bad, but you're holding tension in your shoulders. You'll telegraph every move." "I'm holding tension because my ribs were shattered 2 weeks ago." "Then we'll work around it." He lunged without warning. Seren blocked on instinct. The wooden blades clacked together. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she held position. "Good." Theron pressed harder. Again. They drilled for 20 minutes. Every block, every parry, every counter-strike that her healing body could manage. Lucien appeared in the doorway halfway through, arms crossed, watching in silence. "Stop hovering," Seren called without looking. "I'm not hovering, I'm observing." "You've been observing for 90 minutes. Theron didn't bother hiding his smirk. "Alpha's got it bad. Careful, Corvus." But there was no real heat in Lucien's voice. The days settled into rhythm. Mornings were for physical rehabilitation. Dorian supervised stretches and breathing exercises, while Lucien watched from doorways like a hawk guarding something precious. Afternoons belonged to Caden. They'd walk through the gardens slowly because Seren still couldn't move fast without her ribs screaming. He'd show her where the rabbits nested, where the best climbing trees were, where his mother's rose bushes still bloomed even though no one tended them anymore. "Daddy says you're staying forever now," Caden said one afternoon. They were sitting beneath an old oak watching clouds drift across the sky. "Is that okay with you?" "Yeah." He leaned against her uninjured side. "I like having you here. It's like having a mom again, but different." "Is that weird?" Seren's throat closed. "No, sweetheart, that's not weird. I don't remember her much anymore. My real mom, just pieces. The way she smelled like roses, how she sang songs in a language I didn't understand, how she'd hold me when I had nightmares." His small hand found hers. "But you hold me when I have nightmares now. And you smell like the medical bay, but also like wildflowers. And you tell different stories, but they're good stories. Your mom loved you very much." "I know, Daddy tells me all the time." Caden looked up at her with those silver eyes that were far too old for 6 years. "He loves you too. Did you know that?" Seren's heart stopped. "Caden, he watches you like he used to watch her, when he thinks no one's looking, and he smiles now. He didn't used to smile." The boy's grip tightened on her hand. "Please don't go away. Please don't die like she did." "I'm not going anywhere." Seren pulled him close, ignoring the protest from her ribs. "I promise. I'm not going anywhere." The evenings were when Elder Melis came. She'd arrive with ancient texts and scrolls, teaching Seren everything a heart shield needed to know. Pack law, territory agreements, the complex web of alliances and rivalries that kept the werewolf world from tearing itself apart. Has a human ever held a council position before? Seren asked one evening. They were in the library, surrounded by books that smelled like old paper and dust. No, Melis didn't sugarcoat it. You're the first. Many are. Resistant to the idea. Because I'm weak. Because you're different. Different threatens those who profit from the status quo. The elder's sharp eyes met hers. There are other packs who won't accept this easily. Alphas who believe humans have no place in our world beyond servitude. Like who? Aldrich Winterborn for one. He rules the Northern Reach with an iron fist and a deep hatred for anything that challenges tradition. Magnus Thornhill. Gareth Blackthorn. Melis paused. There's talk of a regional summit. Iron Peak in the Montana Rockies. Every major alpha will attend to discuss recent disruptions. I'm a disruption. You're a revolution. Melis smiled sharp and knowing. And revolutions make people nervous. Combat training intensified. Day 9 found Seren in the practice ring with Theron running through scenarios that made her heart race. Werewolf attacking from the left, what do you do? Silver blade to the throat, knee to the groin run. Good. Now Alpha Aldrich Winterborn arrives at our gates with 20 warriors. What do you do? Seren didn't hesitate. Smile, offer tea, count his men while I'm pouring, memorize faces, alert Lucian immediately, and never turn your back exactly. Theron nodded approval. You're learning fast. The romantic tension built in small moments scattered across days. Day 10, training accident. Seren's foot slipped on wet grass and she started to fall. Lucian was there somehow, always there, catching her before she hit the ground. His hands on her waist, firm, protective, eye contact that held 5 seconds too long. Neither of them breathing. Theron coughed awkwardly from across the ring. I'll give you 2 a minute. Day 11, dinner. Caden told a rambling joke about a wolf and a rabbit that made absolutely no sense, but was hilarious in the way only 6-year-old humor could be. Seren laughed, really laughed, the kind that hurt her healing ribs, but felt too good to stop. When she looked up, Lucian was staring at her with an expression that made her forget how to breathe. What, she asked? Nothing, just... He shook his head, but his eyes were soft. You have a beautiful laugh. I'd forgotten what that sounded like in this house. Day 12, medical check. Dorian examined her scars with clinical detachment, pressing along the healed tissue, checking for infection or complications. Lucian stood in the corner, arms crossed, jaws so tight Seren thought his teeth might crack. Healing remarkably well. Dorian announced, oblivious to the tension. The alpha blood helped significantly. You'll have full range of motion within another week. Lucian's eyes flashed gold. Just for a second. The possessive gleam of a wolf who'd marked something as his and didn't like anyone else touching it. Day 13, library, late evening. Seren was curled in a chair reading about territorial disputes when Lucian entered, carrying his own book. He sat in the chair beside hers without asking. They read in comfortable silence for 20 minutes. Then, they both reached for the bookmark on the side table between them. Their hands collided. Fingers brushed. Electricity sparked. Both froze. Sorry, she whispered. No, He didn't finish. They turned toward each other, leaned in. The air between them felt thick enough to drown in. Then, somewhere in the house, a door slammed. They jerked apart. Lucian cleared his throat. Yeah, me too. Neither of them moved for another minute. Day 15 changed everything. The border patrol found 3 dead scouts at dawn. Not animal attacks, not random violence. These men had been executed with military precision. Throats cut, professional, clean. A message written in murder. Theron was the one who discovered them. He burst into the Alpha house with mud on his boots and blood on his hands. Face grim as death. We need the council, now. Lucian was already moving. Where? eastern border, near the old logging road. Theron's eyes found Seren across the room. There's a message. They arrived within 20 minutes. Callum Reed Lucian's beta was already there with a security team. The bodies were laid out on tarps, 3 young warriors, barely old enough to grow full beards, all dead before their time. But it was their hands that made Seren's stomach turn. The right hands had been cut off, severed at the wrist with something sharp and precise. The left hands clutched pieces of paper held in death grips that had to be pried open. Lucian read the message. His face went stone cold. "What does it say?" Seren asked quietly. He handed her the paper. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. The message was written in blood, neat block letters. "The human abomination will be removed. The old ways will return. Natural order will be restored. This is your only warning." The purists. The purists. Elder Melis arrived moving faster than a woman her age should be able to. She took the message, read it twice, and cursed in a language Seren didn't recognize. "They've been dormant for 30 years. I thought they were extinct." "Who are they?" Seren demanded. "Werewolf supremacists. Extremists who believe humans exist only to serve or be eliminated. They've killed for less than what you represent." Alden, another council member, looked at Lucian. "This is because of her. Because you made a human heart shield. Because you used alpha blood. You're breaking centuries of tradition, and I don't care what they believe." Lucian's voice was deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded violence. "They murdered 3 of our people. They threatened my heart shield. That's an act of war." "Lucian," Seren started. "No." He rounded on her, not angry, fierce, protective. "Don't even think about offering to step down. Don't even suggest it. 3 men are dead because of me. 3 men are dead because extremists murder those who protect change." His hands gripped her shoulders, not hard, but firm enough to make her focus. "We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't bow to threats. We stand our ground. They'll come for me. Let them try." That night, they came. The alarms shattered the darkness at 2 in the morning. Seren woke to the sound of breaking glass and distant screams. She grabbed the silver dagger Lucian had insisted she keep on her nightstand and ran for the door. Lucian was already in the hallway, half-dressed, eyes blazing gold. "Stay in your room. Lock the door." "What's happening?" "Breach. 12 rogues on the east fence. They're heading for the main house." He gripped her shoulders. "Promise me you'll stay inside." "Lucian, promise me, I promise." He shifted mid-run. The massive obsidian wolf disappeared down the hallway in a blur of shadow and fury. Seren locked her door, paced, listened to the chaos outside, screams, snarls, the wet sound of violence that made her stomach turn. She'd made it 3 minutes when she heard it. A child screaming. Not Caden. He was in the secure room with Naira. She knew that. Protocol. The first place they'd taken him when the alarms went off. But someone's child. Someone's pup. Terrified and alone and calling for help that wasn't coming fast enough. Turn toward. Turn toward. Turn toward. Seren unlocked her door. The hallway was chaos. Blood on the walls. Broken furniture. 2 dead rogues already cooling on the stone floor, their throats torn out, their eyes glazed and empty. And at the end of the hall, pressed into a corner with nowhere left to run, a young girl cowered, maybe 9 or 10 years old, blonde hair in braids, wearing pajamas with cartoon wolves on them. Her eyes were wide and glassy with shock. The rogue advancing on her was massive, brown fur matted with blood, some of it fresh, some of it old, wild eyes that saw prey and nothing else. Seren ran. She didn't think, didn't hesitate, just moved, boots slapping against the stone silver dagger raised, heart hammering so hard Shinpei thought it might burst. She threw herself between the rogue and the girl. "Get behind me!" The girl scrambled back, sobbing. "He killed my dad. He killed my dad and I can't find my mom." "I know, sweetheart. I know, but you're safe now. Stay behind me. Don't move. The rogue lunged. Seren slashed with the silver blade, caught it across the muzzle. The blessed metal burned fur and flesh, and the creature reared back with a howl of pain and fury. But it recovered fast. Too fast. It charged again, low, aiming for her leg, trying to knock her down, get to the soft throat beneath. Seren threw the dagger in a desperate move. It struck the rogue's shoulder, not a killing blow, not even close, but enough to make it stumble. Enough to buy seconds. Then it was on her. 400 pounds of muscle and rage slammed into her body. She hit the stone floor hard enough that her vision went white. Her skull bounced. Stars exploded across her field of view. The rogue's claws pinned her shoulders, its weight crushing her ribs, the newly healed ribs that screamed in protest. Her stitches tore. She felt them give way, felt hot blood soaking through her nightshirt, the old wounds opening again, like they'd never healed at all. Like the last 2 weeks had been a dream, and she was back in that clearing, back in the rain, back in the moment where death reached for her with claws extended. The rogue raised a clawed paw, going for her throat, going to end this. Seren grabbed its muzzle with both hands. The fur burned her palms. The teeth gnashed inches from her face, hot breath reeking of rot and blood. She held on, held the killing blow back with pure desperation and strength she didn't know she had. "Run!" she screamed at the girl. "Run now! Find warriors! Run!" "I can't! It hurts!" The rogue's weight pressed down. Seren's arms shook. She couldn't hold it much longer. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't. The door frame beside them exploded in a shower of splinters and stone. Lucian's wolf tore through not the wall this time, but the reinforced door, ripping it off its hinges, sending wood and metal flying. He collided with the rogue in mid-air, teeth finding throat claws raking across vulnerable belly. They crashed into the opposite wall, hard enough to crack stone. The fight lasted 15 seconds. When it was over, the rogue was dead, and Lucian was shifting back to human form, covered in blood, breathing hard eyes, still more wolf than man. He dropped to his knees beside Seren. His hands, still partially clawed, roamed over her body, checking for wounds, finding the torn stitches, and fresh blood soaking through her shirt. "What were you thinking?" His voice broke, cracked right down the middle. "I told you to stay inside. I told you to lock the door. You could have died. Do you understand? You could have died, and She's 10 years old." Seren struggled to sit up. Pain lanced through her ribs, but she forced the words out. "Maybe younger. I heard her screaming. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to stay safe." His hands cupped her face, shaking, desperate. "You were supposed to call for help. You were supposed to." "I couldn't." She met his eyes, held his gaze even though tears were streaming down her face. "I don't know how to hear a child in danger and not move. I don't know how to be anything else." Lucian's forehead dropped to hers. His breath was ragged, uneven. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, broken and raw and absolutely honest. "Then I'll stand with you every time." A pause, a breath. Then, "Because I love you, Seren. God help me, I love you. I have loved you since the moment I saw you bleeding in that clearing with my son in your arms. And I don't know how to stop. I don't want to stop." The world stopped turning. Seren's breath caught in her throat. "Lucian, I love you." The words tumbled out like he'd been holding them back for years, and the dam had finally broken. "I love your courage, your compassion, the way you turn toward fear like it doesn't exist. I love the way Caden lights up when you walk into a room. I love the way you see the world like every moment is worth saving, like every life matters equally. I love you, and I'm terrified of losing you, terrified of watching you bleed again, terrified that one day you'll run toward danger and I won't get there in time and..." Seren kissed him, cut off his words, with her mouth on his tasting blood, and fear and love and desperation all mixed together. His hands were in her hair, immediately cradling her skull, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. The kiss was desperate, urgent. 5 years of his grief and 3 years of her loneliness crashing together and catching fire. His tongue slid against hers, drawing a soft sound from her throat that made him pull her closer, careful of her injuries, but unable to resist the need for contact. For proof that she was alive, that they were both alive. They broke apart only when breathing became absolutely necessary. Lucien rested his forehead against hers, both of them shaking. "I love you too," Seren whispered. "I think I've loved you since you cried for me, since you stayed beside my bed for 3 days, since you gave me your blood and your home and your son's trust. I love you. Stay with me." His voice was rough, raw. "Not just tonight. Not just until you heal. Stay with me. Always. Let me keep you safe. Let me love you. Let me." "Yes." Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Theron appeared with Callum, both partially shifted, ready for more fighting. They stopped short at the scene. The dead rogue. Seren bleeding on the floor. Lucien holding her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. And behind them, slower, an older woman. 40-something, blonde hair streaked with grey, face ravaged with grief and terror. "Nessa!" The woman's cry was anguished. "Nessa, where are you, baby? Where?" The young girl. Nessa stumbled out from behind a broken piece of furniture. "Mom!" They collided. The woman dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms, sobbing. "I thought I lost you. I thought your father, The lady saved me." Nessa pointed at Seren with a shaking hand. "The rogue was going to kill me, and the lady stood in front of me and fought it, and..." The woman looked at Seren. Really looked. Her eyes were red-rimmed and devastated, but there was something else there too. Recognition. Understanding. "You're the heart shield, the human everyone's talking about." "Seren Thorne, Lisa Hemlock. We're from the southern border. We came here because we heard Shadowmere was safe. That you had a human in the council, that things were changing." Her voice cracked. "My maid died protecting us tonight, and if you hadn't saved her..." She couldn't finish, just held her daughter and cried. Seren wanted to say something, wanted to offer comfort, but her ribs were screaming, and blood was soaking through her shirt, and the world was tilting sideways. "Dorian!" Lucien barked. "Now!" The healer appeared within seconds, already carrying his kit. Again seriously, "Seren, what part of 'let yourself heal' did you not understand where there was a child? There's always a child with you." But his hands were gentle as he examined the torn stitches. "You're going to run out of blood at this rate." "Then we'll give her more," Lucien said. Not a suggestion, a statement of fact. Dawn revealed the full scope of the attack. 12 rogues, all dead. 5 pack members injured but alive. 1 fatality, Nessa's father, a warrior named Torin, who'd taken 3 rogues down before they overwhelmed him. But the message was clear. The purists weren't done. This was just the opening move, a test, a declaration. That afternoon, a summons arrived, sealed with 12 different pack sigils, formal, binding, heavy with the weight of tradition and law. Regional Summit, Iron Peak Fortress, Montana, 7 days hence. All major alphas required to attend. Agenda discussion of recent territorial disruptions and proposed changes to pack law regarding human integration. Attendance is mandatory. Lucien read it twice. His jaw worked. His hand found Seren's fingers lacing together. They're calling a vote. On what? But Seren already knew. On you. On the title. On whether humans deserve rights in our world. He looked up, eyes hard as steel. We're going. All of us. Yumi Kaden, full security detail. And you're going to show them exactly why you earned that shield. Elder Melis arrived within the hour, already packing scrolls and documents and evidence. This is bigger than you know, she said, spreading maps across the council table. Aldrich Winterborn will be there. He's opposed to human integration on principle. Magnus Thornhill, Gareth Blackthorn. At least 6 other alphas who believe the old ways are the only ways. She looked at Seren. If the council votes against you, Shadowmere loses its protection agreements. We'd be labeled progressive extremists, cut off from trade, from alliances, from everything that keeps a pack alive in this world. And if they vote for me, then you'll have changed the werewolf world forever. For the first time in recorded history, humans will have recognized rights, protections, a voice. Melis smiled grimly. No pressure. The next 6 days were chaos. Strategy sessions that lasted until midnight. Veron drilling Seren on defensive tactics until her body screamed. Callum preparing security measures, routes, safe houses, contingency plans for every possible disaster. Dorian checked and rechecked her injuries, muttering about humans who didn't know how to stay down and heal properly. And Lucian, always there, always watching, his hand finding hers under tables during meetings, his presence in doorways when she couldn't sleep, his voice in the dark promising he wouldn't let anything happen to her. On the night before they left, he found her on the balcony again, their place, where they'd almost kissed a dozen times, where he'd confessed he loved her while covered in rogue blood and shaking with fear. Can't sleep, terrified, of the summit, of failing you, of embarrassing you in front of alphas who already think I'm a mistake, of proving them right. She turned to face him. What if I'm not enough? Lucian closed the distance between them. His hands framed her face, tilting her head up to meet his eyes. Those grey eyes that had been dead for 5 years and were finally alive again. Do you trust me? Yes. Then believe me when I say this. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, gentle, reverent. You are more than enough. You're the reason I remember how to feel anything at all. You're the reason my son smiles again. You're the reason warriors twice your size kneel in respect. You're the reason I wake up in the morning and want to face the day instead of just surviving it. He leaned in. His lips brushed her forehead, her temple, the corner of her mouth. You are the bravest person I've ever met. And whatever happens at that summit, I'm standing beside you. Always. Not because I have to, because I choose to, because I love you. Because you're mine and I'm yours and nothing is going to change that. He kissed her then, slow and thorough and deep. His hands slid into her hair. Her fingers curled into his shirt, holding on, anchoring herself to this moment. When they finally broke apart, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. Whatever happens, we face it together. Together, Seren agreed. The convoy left at dawn. 3 armored vehicles, 12 warriors, 1 alpha king, 1 6-year-old boy who'd insisted on coming because Heart Shield might need me, and 1 human woman with 5 silver scars and a title that was about to be tested by fire. Seren sat in the back seat with Lucian and Caden, watching the Cascade Mountains give way to high desert and then to the Rockies, watching the world change outside the windows while her stomach twisted with nerves that wouldn't settle. Lucian's hand rested on her knee. His thumb traced slow circles that were both comforting and distracting, grounding her, reminding her she wasn't alone. You're going to be brilliant, he murmured. Seren wanted to believe him. 3 days from now, she'd stand before 15 regional alphas and prove she deserved to exist. 3 days from now, everything would change. She touched the silver shield pin on her collar, felt the weight of it, the responsibility, and she thought about her mother's words. Turn toward, always toward. That's how you stay human in a world full of monsters. Seren was about to walk into a room full of alphas who wanted her dead or gone or stripped of everything she'd bled for. But she wouldn't be alone. She had Lucian. She had Caden. She had a pack that had learned to see her. And she had 5 scars that proved she didn't know how to run. The Rockies rose in the distance, grey and sharp and unforgiving. Iron Peak Fortress waited, and Seren Thorn was ready. Iron Peak Fortress rose from the Montana Rockies like something carved by gods who'd forgotten mercy. Grey stone, sharp towers, walls thick enough to withstand centuries. Banners flew from 15 poles, each one representing a regional pack, each one a declaration of power. The convoy slowed at the main gates. Guards in ceremonial armor checked credentials. One guard's eyes landed on Seren with cold contempt. The human heard about you. Lucian was out of the vehicle instantly, stepped between them. His voice was arctic. You will address Heartshield Thorn with respect, or you'll address me in the arena. Choose now. The guard paled, stepped back. My apologies, Alpha Ashford. They entered the courtyard. Warriors from different packs clustered, eyeing each other with wary tension. Seren felt every gaze land on her. The only human. The disruption. The thing that didn't belong. Lucian's hand found the small of her back. Warm, steady, possessive. Whatever happens, I'm with you. The formal dinner that night was held in the Great Hall. Vaulted ceilings stretched 3 stories high. Tapestries depicted ancient battles. A long table dominated the center 50 seats 30 field tonight. 15 regional alphas, their seconds. And Seren, she sat to Lucian's right. The position of honor. The position that declared this human matters. The alphas filed in. Ronan Hartwell arrived first, friendly, easy smile. Heartshield, looking forward to meeting you properly. Isolde Ravencroft came next, sharp-eyed, elegant. The woman who took 5 arrows. We'll talk later. Magnus Thornhill, cold, traditional. He didn't acknowledge Seren at all. Then Aldrich Winterborn entered. The hall went quiet. He stopped at Seren's chair, extended his hand. Heartshield Thorn, how is Bryn? Seren stood, took his hand. Alpha Winterborn, shaken but alive, thanks to you. He held her gaze. I owe you a debt I can never repay. But I will try, starting tomorrow. Once the whispers started immediately. Aldrich Winterborn, the most traditionalist alpha in the West, had just publicly acknowledged a debt to a human. Then, the last alpha arrived. Mid-40s, handsome, cold amber eyes, expensive suit. Apologies for my lateness. Had to deal with disruptions in my territory. He took the seat across from Seren, studied her like a specimen. Gareth Blackthorn, alpha of the Western Reaches, and you must be the famous human. Seren Thorn, Heartshield of Shadowmere. Heartshield, he drew out the words. Quite the title for someone who's been in our world for 3 years. Tell me, do you truly believe one act of self-sacrifice erases centuries of human weakness? Lucian's fork hit his plate. Careful, Blackthorn. I'm simply asking questions every alpha here is thinking. Gareth leaned forward. Your human is the reason 3 scouts are dead. The reason the purists have awakened. The reason we're all here instead of managing our territories. What makes her worth the trouble? Seren kept her voice steady. I didn't ask to be Heartshield. I saw a child in danger and I moved. How convenient that the child was the Alpha King's son. Did you calculate the political advantage before or after you threw yourself in front of those arrows? Lucian surged to his feet. That's enough. Is it? Gareth's eyes never left Seren. Humans don't belong at this table. They don't belong in our world except as servants. Giving one a sacred title doesn't change biology. It just makes us look weak. Aldrich's voice cut through. The girl saved my granddaughter, bled for her. If you're suggesting she's playing politics, Blackthorn, you're a fool. Or I'm the only one willing to speak truth. Ronan Hartwell spoke. I've known weak Blackthorn. Weak is hiding behind tradition because you're afraid of change. This woman took 5 arrows and survived. That's courage. Or stupidity. Lucian was coiled like a spring. Seren touched his hand. Let me handle this. You want to talk about weakness? Seren's voice was quiet but carried. Let's discuss how you lost 3 territories last year. How your warriors desert because your leadership is tyrannical. Or we could talk about courage, about choosing to stand in front of death when every instinct screams to run. About building something better instead of clinging to something old because it's comfortable. She leaned forward. You think I'm weak because I'm human. I think you're weak because you're afraid. Afraid that if humans have rights, you'll lose power. Afraid the world will change and you won't survive it. Silence. Elder Thane rose. This is a formal dinner, not a sparring match you'll debate tomorrow. For now we eat, we remember we're civilized. The dinner continued in tense silence. Across the table, Gareth smiled at Seren. Cold, calculating. Tomorrow would be hell. The attack came at 2 in the morning. Explosions. Seren woke, grabbed her silver dagger. Lucian burst through her door. We need to move. 8 rogues inside. They're coming for you. Footsteps thundered toward them. Stay behind me. Lucian shifted partially. Claw's fangs ready. The first rogue came. Lucian tore out its throat. Second and third together. Coordinated. Trained. Lucian fought with brutal efficiency, but there were too many. The fourth got past him. Came for Seren. She dropped into stance. Dagger ready. The rogue lunged. She sidestepped, slashed its ribs. Silver burned deep. It howled, but recovered fast. Backhanded her. She flew, hit the wall. Stars exploded. Her ribs screamed. The rogue advanced. Theron Corvus burst in full wolf form. Took it down in one leap. Callum appeared with warriors. They formed a circle around Seren while Lucian finished the last rogues. 8 bodies lay cooling. Then down the hallway, a small boy stumbled into view. 7 years old, dark hair, amber eyes, torn bloody pajamas. A 9th rogue emerged behind him. Massive, battle-scarred, the leader. It saw the boy. Easy target. Seren moved without thinking. Threw herself between them. Run. The boy froze, paralyzed with fear. The rogue hit her like a battering ram. Skull bounced off stone. Weight crushed her chest. Claws pinned her shoulders, tearing through old scars. Blood soaked her shirt. Stitches ripped. The rogue's jaws inches from her face. She grabbed its muzzle, held it back through desperate strength. Run! She gasped at the boy. Please, find warriors. Run! The boy stumbled away. Lucian's wolf materialized like vengeance, collided with the rogue, took them through the wall. The fight was savage, short. Lucian destroyed it. He shifted back covered in blood, dropped beside Seren. Hands checking wounds, finding too many. Why do you keep... His voice broke. There was a boy, 7 years old. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to let warriors handle it. Tears cut through blood on his face. I'm terrified of losing you. Every time you throw yourself at death, I can barely breathe. I'm sorry. I can't be someone who hears a child crying and does nothing. I'm not angry. I'm terrified. His forehead pressed to hers. I can't lose you. Not after you taught me how to feel again. I can't. Footsteps. The hallway filled with Alpha's warriors, all staring. A woman held the boy, same dark hair, amber eyes. Gareth Blackthorn's mate. Gareth pushed through, saw his son whole alive, saw Seren broken bleeding. He knelt, pulled his family close, looked at Seren. You saved my son. Seren coughed blood. She threw herself between the rogue and Kieran. A warrior reported. Without her the boy would be dead. Gareth stared. Why? After what I said at dinner, why would you save him? Seren found her voice. Because he's 7, and he was terrified. That's reason enough. Gareth bowed his head, the deep bow. I was wrong about you. Thank you for my son's life. I will not forget. The council session convened at noon. The chamber was circular. Stone benches rising in tiers. 15 alphas at the lowest tier. Guards lining walls triple the usual number. In the center on a simple wooden chair sat Seren, freshly bandaged, ribs taped tight, pain barely controlled, but sitting straight. Chin up, Lucian stood behind her. A wall of protection. Elder Thane called order. We address recent disruptions, the elevation of a human to honor, the proposed integration of humans with recognized rights, the extremist violence targeting supporters. Alpha Aldrich Winterborn has the floor. Aldrich stood, moved to center beside Seren. 3 weeks ago, I argued Seren Thorn's title should be stripped. That tradition mattered more than change. That humans had no place beyond servitude. Silence. I was wrong. Gasps rippled through the chamber. 8 days ago, she saved my granddaughter. Last night, she saved Gareth Blackthorn's son after he'd spent dinner insulting her. Took wounds that would kill warriors. Didn't let go until the child was safe. His voice rang. I've been a warrior 60 years. I've never seen this kind of selfless courage. She represents everything we claim to value: courage, sacrifice, protection. If we reject her, we're hypocrites. We're the monsters we fight. I vote yes. Yes to the Thorn Accord. Yes to human rights. Yes to change. Then Gareth stood. Every eye turned. I vote yes. Eruption. Gareth raised his hand. I still have concerns, but last night this woman saved my son when she had every reason to let him die. That's not weakness. That's strength I can't match. She deserves her title. Humans deserve rights. Elder Thane. Heartshield Thorn. Your words. Seren stood slowly. I didn't ask for this title. I saw children in danger and moved. That's all. But if my choices can create space for humans to be seen, valued, protected, then I'll carry this title, these scars, and I'll keep stepping in front of monsters. Because that's what shields do. We stand in the gap, take the hits, don't move until the threat is gone. Her voice strengthened. So vote however you need, but I'm not going anywhere, not backing down, not apologizing for believing every life matters equally. That's the world I'm fighting for. The chamber erupted. Elder Thane slammed his staff. We vote now, all in favor of the Thorn Accord. Hands rose. Ronan Hartwell. Yes. Isolde Ravencroft. Yes. Aldrich Winterborn. Yes. Gareth Blackthorn. Yes. Down the line, Magnus Thornhill and 2 others. No. Elder Thane counted. 12 in favor, 3 opposed. The Thorn Accord is ratified. Human rights are now recognized law. Howls shook the chamber. Lucian's hands on Seren's shoulders. You changed the world. He pulled her around. Seren Thorn, in front of these witnesses, I claim you as my mate. Not for politics, because I love you. Because you're the bravest person I've known. Because I want to spend my life learning to be worthy of you. Tears blurred her vision. I love you too. Is that a yes? Yes. He kissed her as the hall erupted. 1 week later, the purists' trial short brutal. 12 arrested, 3 killed resisting. All sentenced to life imprisonment. Message sent: attack humans under pack protection, face consequences. The mating ceremony under full moon in Shadowmere. Seren in silver gown, Lucian in formal attire, Caden as ring bearer, so serious, so proud. Lucian's bite gentle on her shoulder. The mark bloomed, visible proof of their bond. Later, Caden burst in. Now Heartshield is really my mom. He launched himself at her. She caught him carefully. Is that okay? It's the best thing ever. Over his head, she met Lucian's eyes. He leaned in the doorway, watching them with love so clear it made her ache. This was what she'd fought for. Family, home, belonging. 3 months later, spring in Shadowmere. Wildflowers, new growth, changes rippling through pack life. The Thorn Accord inspired 23 packs to implement human rights. Seren's name in history books. But in Shadowmere, she was just Seren, Lucian's mate, Caden's mom, the Heartshield. She ran integration classes 3 times weekly. 40 human children training alongside wolf pups, learning together, building the future. 340 werewolves, 92 humans, all with honored roles. Her mother's journals displayed in the community library. Theron running mixed combat units. Evening sun turned the forest gold. Seren on the porch with tea. Lucian joined her arm around her waist. Caden finished chapter 5. He's doing so well. Because you're patient. He smiled. Aldrich wrote, Bryn wants to visit, wants you to teach her to fight, wants to be just like you. Seren's throat closed. I don't know what to say. Except you're a hero. That you changed the world. He kissed her forehead. That you're exactly who I knew you were. I just made one choice. One choice that cost you everything. That rewrote centuries of law. He held her close. Don't minimize yourself. You're the bravest person I know. I love you more every day. Do you ever regret it, taking those arrows? Never. Because it brought me here, to you, to Caden, to belonging. He lifted her hand, kissed each knuckle. You gave me back my life, my heart. Inside, Caden called for help. Lucian kissed her softly. I'll get it, you rest. I'm not fragile, I know, but let me care for you anyway. He went inside, she heard father and son voices blending. Comfortable sounds of home. This was everything. Not titles or laws. This, the quiet moments. The life she'd earned with blood and courage and the choice to turn toward. Epilogue. They still tell Seren Thorne's story. The human who took 5 arrows, who held a boy for 4 minutes 17 seconds, who saved children, changed laws, rewrote the world. But that's not the story Seren tells. When children ask, and they always ask, she says, strength isn't what you're born with. It's what you're willing to endure for others. Courage isn't fearlessness. It's moving forward despite terror. Change comes from those willing to sacrifice most. She touches her scars. I was breakable. I am breakable. But I was also the bravest person in that forest, not because I wasn't afraid, because I chose to act anyway. The most powerful force isn't domination. It's compassion, and compassion is always the bravest rebellion. That night porch with Lucian and Caden. Forest settling, stars emerging. I love you, Lucian murmured. I love you too. Caden drowsy against her. Safe, secure. Seren traced her scars. 5 silver lines. Reminders of the choice that changed everything. Turn toward. Her mother's words. When fear tells you to turn away, you turn toward. She turned toward, into danger, into pain, into impossible choices, and found home, love, herself. She changed the world, not through power but through the simple choice to care, to protect, to stand between darkness and light. That's what a heart shield does. As stars wheeled overhead and family breathed beside her and packs settled into peace, Seren knew she'd do it all again. Every arrow, every scar, every choice. Because compassion is the bravest rebellion. And rebels change everything.